Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm thrilled to be on campus and to have the opportunity to talk with you about young women, overachievers, OCD, and the tweaks that we can make in our day-to-day lives so we can reduce our stress and really optimize our mental energy. The first one is the understanding that not everything we think is automatically true. And when we develop the skills to observe our thoughts, as opposed to automatically believing everything we think, we free up so much mental energy and we gain a lot more influence over how we interpret the world around us. So it struck me that in these rooms of really, really high-achieving college women, you can do anything. You take engineering courses. You have double majors and double minors. You go to New York City to intern for the summer. I mean, you are all immensely intellectually talented. But I think one thing that college students aren't being taught that they really need to be taught is how to deal with your thoughts. And how to deal when you have a problem or it feels like you have a problem and really it ends up feeling like there's a monster or something in your brain because you don't know how to make it quiet and make the thoughts go away. How many of you have ever had a thought or worry and you're picturing how it's going to go in your head and you try to solve it in your head and you're really worried and then the thing that you were so worried about happens, but the way it happens is absolutely nothing like what you imagined. It turned out to be a non-issue, and you spend a ton of energy and time stressing about it, and it just didn't happen. So that's one comforting thing in life, and if you only take one thing away from tonight, let this be it. Most of the things we worry about don't happen. So any adjustments that we can make in our thought processes to worry less will free up so much better happy space in our brain. So part of why I'm so passionate about talking about this is we have the power to choose what to focus on. If we have a thought in our head that we don't think is true or that we find upsetting or that we don't like, we don't have to engage with it. We have a lot of control over the chatter that goes on in our heads. I think the best way to get good at this is to practice observing your thoughts. I think many of us have this idea that when we have a thought, it's automatically true, or it's automatically, a true statement about the world around us. We all have a voice in our head that narrates the world for us. Every single one of us has a voice that comments on what's for breakfast and comments on the color of this carpet and just that explains the world to us as we go about our days. But the thing is, that voice in your head is not you. Just for fun, let's do an exercise and it can be done totally silently. Say hello in your head. So if you can hear that voice say hello, that voice isn't you. You're the observer of that voice, and you're the director of that voice. But the things that that voice says automatically and reflexively don't necessarily reflect your beliefs or your viewpoints or how the world actually is. I recommend that college students look at this voice in their head as just like an obnoxious roommate that won't shut up. Like this roommate comments on everything, it talks all day, it focuses on the negative, and when there isn't anything negative going on, it will make up negative stories to have something to talk about. And in real life, we would never put up with a roommate like that. Like, we would call the housing office immediately and say, listen, you have to transfer this psycho out of here. So I really recommend that you start to think about your brain roommate. When your brain says something like, oh, I really shouldn't eat a bagel for breakfast. I've been having too many carbs lately. Like you can talk back to that voice and say, where did you get that idea from that I'm eating too much carbs? I don't think that's necessarily true. And I'm craving a bagel. Let's have it. If the voice in your head says like, oh shit, we're totally gonna fail this test. Everyone's gonna do way better than us. You can take a step back and say, what evidence do I have that supports that? Why do I think that everyone else is going to do better on this test? I've been studying, things are gonna go fine. Thank you for your input, voice in my head, but I am categorically rejecting that piece of feedback. So if you do this enough, and if you pay attention to the voice in your head and notice it and correct it when it's wrong, you can slowly but surely start to create a worldview that's more positive and more positive about you. It won't be like, the voice inside your head is constantly denigrating you and you feel at war with your mind. Instead, you could have kind of like a buddy in your brain that you go through your life with. And I think it's much better to have a cheerleader inside your head than it is to have a critic. I think frequently we think that, we have a thought about whether we're going to get recruited or whether we're going to get into grad school. And we develop a lot of fear around uncertainty. And we have this idea in our heads that any outcome that isn't the outcome that we planned on won't make us happy. But I would argue that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that if we open ourselves up to more possibilities in the future and are just open to what the universe sends our way, we will find so many more interesting opportunities in life. This sounds a little bit glib, but I really encourage college women to adopt a new mantra. Keep calm and trust that the universe has your back. By no means am I suggesting that you do things half-baked or that you don't go after your big, beautiful goals. By contrast, I'm encouraging you to work really effectively and take good care of yourself so you don't run yourself into the ground as you go after those goals. Instead, we want to do things to retrain our brains so we kind of intuitively know whether or not the way we're reacting to something is normal or not. So a really good exercise that I recommend you try the next time you have a problem or you have a worry and you can't tell whether your reaction is normal or whether the way you're feeling is normal, is to say to yourself, in a room of 100 women my age, how many would feel the way I'm feeling? Or in a room of 100 women my age, how many would have the reaction that I'm having? Your brain tends to serve back like pretty automatic feedback. If you say to yourself, in a room of 100 women my age, how many would have this feeling that I'm having? Your brain is pretty good at saying, only the ones who tend to be anxious, or most of them would feel that way. You're not being weird at all, or none of them would feel that way. This probably isn't a good use of your mental energy. It's a really fun exercise to try. Perhaps the next time you want to try it, imagine a room just like this and say to yourself, if all the women in this room were struggling with this problem, how many would have the reaction I'm having? And you can test that and figure out whether or not the way you're feeling is normal. And what's cool is that the more you do this, the more your brain gets better at developing that muscle of knowing intuitively whether or not the way you're feeling is normal. You won't have to do this formal exercise anymore. You're sort of retraining a brain that knows you and you have self-knowledge, and you can figure out whether your reactions and whether the things that are stressing you out in any given situation are appropriate or not. An exercise that I recommend college women try is to imagine yourself as having an imaginary iPhone battery hovering next to your head, and make a point of checking in with yourself throughout the day and saying, what's my charge right now? So say it's like 11 a.m., you just got out of class, you had coffee, you like the outfit you're wearing that day, you're having a good hair day, the weather's nice. You check in with yourself and you say, okay, I'm at 88%. I'm in a pretty good place to go carpe the diem right now. Whereas if it's 3 p.m., you just snapped at your friend for no reason, you're having fantasies of kicking the backs of the ankles of the people in front of you who are walking too slow. And you realize that you haven't eaten anything since a granola bar for breakfast and you're getting lethally hangry. You need to check in with yourself and say, what's my charge? And odds are good if that's the laundry list of emotional problems you're dealing with right now, your charge is probably at like 11% or 8%. So it's really important to have like things that you can do that are practically in your muscle memory that can get your charge back up. You know, we take massive action when our iPhones get to 2%. We go up to strangers and we ask if we can use their charger. We crawl around on the floor looking for the nearest possible outlet. We'll put our phone on airplane mode. Like, we do serious things to keep our phones from dying. But when we start to hit that 2% point, we're nowhere near as, proactive and compassionate with ourselves. Instead, we try to push ourselves to do more. We guzzle coffee and we say, come on, get in the game, be a girl boss. But we're not like really nice about it. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're at this point of low energy, and instead of assessing why am I low energy and what can I do to feel better, instead we're just kind of shouting goals at ourselves. So I would really encourage you, the next time you're feeling hangry, the next time it's that 3 p.m. feeling and you're feeling a little bit awful, like instead of chugging a Red Bull or instead of like listening to some really loud music and powering through it, think to yourself, like, what are 3 or 4 things that I could do right now that will get my charge back up? And odds are good that if you do them, you'll feel better. It's really, really powerful to experience that when you're uncomfortable or you're, feeling just physically like, ugh, or you're tired. It's really empowering to know that you have the tools to take care of yourself, and you can go from feeling completely agitated to completely self-soothed all on your own. It's awesome. But before I close up, I want to talk to you about the importance of celebrating your wins. I think as high-achieving women, we have this reflex that when someone says, hey, how's it going? Our automatic response is, oh, good, crazy busy. And crazy busy is like our neutral. It's this sense of just constant momentum. And it's not a bad thing, it's good momentum. But it doesn't really reflect like the richness in our lives and the extent to which we feel grateful for all the stuff that's going right. I think other women would actually be really pleasantly surprised by a response like that. Like, oh, things are going good for you. Things are going good for me too. I think it could have a really powerful ripple effect where, when we stop looking at our lives as like, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff to do, and instead take time to celebrate when things are going really right and celebrate when we're doing a really good job, we'll overall have a much more positive worldview. And in general, we'll have much more fun being ourselves. Thank you.